Hello, good afternoon. My name is Hanif Bobat. I'm of Indian origin, born in India in the year 1957. So I guess I'll leave you guys to determine my age without specifying. And my parents migrated to then what was called Nyasa land, which is now Malawi, which is bordered. It was a beautiful country in East Central Africa, bordered by Mozambique and Zambia. And we have the fifth largest lake, Lake Malawi. Malawi is popular for two famous things: its lake and its fishes. It probably has the most diverse range of fishes in the whole world, one of the places. Anyway, back to Manchester. So I kind of came to Manchester for studies in the late 70s and then stayed over. So Manchester is my home now, actually. But equally, I kind of triangulate between three continents: Asia, where I was born in India; Africa, where I grew up; and Europe, Manchester, I live in. So it's like a triangular. So when people say, "Where are you from?" I say, "Well, I'm a global citizen." So that puts things in context. And now I am obviously in Rusholme. So and I've been working in the. My previous roles have been various. I've worked in the NHS as Development Policy Officer for the then old Manchester Primary Care Trust, and NHS has seen major changes. And then I left the NHS, joined another international charity called TB Alert, which was working around raising awareness on tuberculosis in the UK because incidence rates were rising. I worked with them for 3 years, and then I actually joined EHF, which I'll speak about later on, and my role here within that.
Okay, let's go back to your studies and tell us what you studied in Manchester, Hanif.
I was I enrolled for a fashion designing course at the old Toast Rack building in Manchester. Actually, some of you who are watching and know Manchester well, and it was in the kind of early 70s when Manchester was actually the hub for music growth, development, art, music scene. And in those days, it used to be called, I can't remember, Hollings, it's Toast Rack building. So I enrolled for fashion designing. Eventually I found out I wasn't good at it. I dropped out and eventually joined Manchester University to do business studies, which after a year into the course, in those days it was easy to go in and out of courses. So I dropped out of that as well because finance wasn't my strong forte. I dropped out of that, and actually I kind of just did an ordinary degree in psychology then. So basically that's my first degree was in psychology, and the interest was always there to work in the kind of health and social care sector.
And then from the psychology degree you went into the NHS from there? Or?
Actually I joined the NHS much later. Actually my first paid job in Manchester was working for a mental health organization. I was unemployed in those days, and I came across a group which was very much supporting and involving patients or service users, as we intermittently call them today. Some people like to call them service users, someone says survivors, patients. So I was quite like the idea of what they were doing. And in those days, they were probably one of the earliest South Asian support groups around mental health. It was called Awaz. I think it was late 70s or early 80s. So I joined the third sector or community voluntary sector as advocacy worker. It's subsequently after a couple of years with them that I joined the NHS. Actually, the NHS role was quite interesting because it was a role which was 1 foot in the NHS and 1 foot in the third sector or community sector. So I was kind of policy liaison officer. So my role was to share what's happening in the NHS with the third sector and vice versa.
Okay, interesting. And where did you live when you first came to Manchester? You were a student. Where did you
I
live?
think my early days in Manchester were spent around Clyde Road in Disbury, which was kind of the very popular place in those days for students. Clyde Road, Disbury area, and subsequently then I moved to Whalley Range, lived above a newsagent, sharing a flat. So I've changed accommodation. At one stage I was living on the prestigious Park Lane in Levenshulme, not the Park Lane in London, but I think Park Drive, I think just off Slade Lane. So I've kind of changed. I've lived in kind of the leafy suburbs of Manchester, as well as actually I lived some time also in Hume in the old days when Hume was notoriously famous for its, drugs and etc. And we had those huge flats in Hume. If those people who lived in Manchester for the last 30-40 years will remember those flats. So I had good fortune to experience living in those flats as well. So I've had quite a interesting experiences of living in Manchester.
And how about your family? You're married. You have a
yes, I am married, and I live at the moment in another leafy suburb of Manchester, in Whalley Range, one of those zones where it's you can't chop a tree, so it's quite nice and quiet, not too far from the old. There used to be an old college or old GMB Union building, which is now actually converted or bought over by the British Muslim Heritage Centre. Very old historic building. So in that kind of vicinity of there. So I live there with my wife and my children who are grown up. My son's grown up, married. He has his own place. My youngest daughter is with me. She's just qualified, and so she stays with me at the moment.
What's she qualified in?
And my daughter actually did sociology as a first degree, but never managed to find a job in that sector. So then she actually did a master's in business studies, and actually now has a job with a surveying company as a business manager for that company, which basically she's quite happy in that job. She's changed. I think the previous job role was with within the automotive industry as business manager for that company. Right now she's in kind of property management, and it's an architectural stroke chartered surveying company. My youngest daughter is just qualified, and she's working for a company which does research with universities, with students. So she's kind of more as like a research assistant. So at the moment we're all kind of trying to manage space within the house, because everyone's at home, working from home. With the corona pandemic, it's kind of changed the whole way of working. I think we have something called new normal now, and adjusting to that landscape and issues which go around with managing your lifestyle has been challenging. It has had its positive aspects and also negative aspects of managing your lifestyle in the current situation.
Okay, so we can now move to Ethnic Health Forum. So let's start at the very beginning of that and how you became involved, when that was, etc.
I joined Ethnic Health Forum about 7-8 years ago as a volunteer initially, and then a vacancy came up for a paid post, and then kind of I applied for it, and I had the required skills and experience. I joined EHF as a development worker stroke officer. We were in the early days, we were based in Cheetham Hill, but the last 5 years or so we are actually based in Rusholme now, and as part of changes within EHF, they wanted to move to an area which probably had a lot of newly arrived community settling, and Rusholme we saw Rusholme as a potentially good place to find office space, and hence our move to Rusholme almost 6 years ago now. And we started off with very little resources in terms of funding and projects. But with hard work and effort and good teamwork within my other colleagues, we have reached a stage now where we are actually successfully running a number of projects for the residents and communities which live within Rusholme M14 boundaries. So, we see a lot of clients from Rusholme, Hume, Mosside, Longside, some who live on the boundary with Fallowfield. So, around the postcode of M14. But Rusholme is the hub of our organization at the moment.
And what specific work do you do, Hanif? I imagine that's a lot, very varied.
My role specifically actually is quite varied, but the title is development worker. So I actually do a lot of the kind of policy, strategic work around where the project is heading towards, what are we doing, so making some kind of, it's a developmental role. So it's kind of liaising with external agencies, developing new partnerships with NHS, other sector organizations, other organizations who work within the third sector in Manchester and beyond. Also providing some support mechanism to staff who are newly within the EHF. So it's quite a varied role. So it's developmental officer role, but there is also hands-on work within the organization, so, and I don't shy from, hoovering the offices as well when required, to meeting a chief exec of a large charity as well. So it's quite a diverse and interesting role, and I love it. Hence I'm in the sector, and working for EHF actually, for me, I enjoy it, and that's why I'm still doing it.
And what service does EHF provide? So why do people come here for advice, or what information are they after?
Yeah, primarily our EHF actually, our strengths are around providing welfare rights advice in bilingual, in different languages. So we have staff who speak Arabic, Urdu, Spanish, Punjabi, Gujarati, and Hindi, amongst other languages, which actually other organizations don't provide that service. So our strength is a client needs a service who is struggling in English, speaks Arabic or Urdu or Farsi or one other language. So we have staff who are able to support the client. So our strength is around welfare rights. A lot of the clientele are newly arrived individuals who settled in Rusholme or surrounding areas, who are struggling with understanding the system. So they might be entitled to benefits, but they don't know how to navigate, for example, universal credit. And recent government changes over the last couple of years has made it compulsory for everyone to be on UC, which is universal credit. So it's quite difficult for somebody new to the country to actually understand what is universal credit, how can they sign on, how can they log in the system, are they getting the right benefits. So our role is to help and support them. So that's an element of the work, welfare rights. Alongside that, we also do small projects around health promotion and awareness. So currently we are doing some awareness work around cancer, where we are working in partnership with the Answer Cancer program, which is led by a number of organizations in a collective partnership. So one of the work streams is around cancer awareness, and we do some mental health support. So we get referrals from other agencies where individuals may be having stress, anxiety, they don't know where to go for help and support. So we come in and look at the individual's situation and then signpost them. Where we can offer us support, then we would signpost them to other agencies. That's where our partnership work comes in, working in collaboration with other organizations within Manchester.
Okay. And you had some promotional leaflets you want to talk about, a campaign you're working on?
Just to give you an idea in terms of, we had one of our earlier posters, flyers, which was around, to break it down. We provide employment support, welfare rights advice I've spoken about, mental health support, and also we have a volunteering project where we encourage individuals to join the organization as a volunteer. And a lot of people actually have skills, but they don't have the confidence to get on the first step to finding meaningful employment. So we offer a forum, we offer them opportunity to come in and join us as a volunteer and help them develop their skills, build their confidence, and through that we have had few very good examples where we have individuals who have joined us as volunteer, then became paid workers, and today have moved on to very successful full-time jobs. We obviously miss them, but that is part of the kind of moving on process. So yeah, the four strands we have is the employment support, welfare rights advice, mental health support, and volunteering project alongside with cancer awareness.
Okay, excellent.
I forgot to mention, we also do, as and when every year Manchester City Council has a hate crime awareness program. So we also take part and help with that, with the raising awareness around hate crime. What is hate crime? What can one do about it if one has been affected? And so we've also worked in partnership with a group of photographers based in Manchester, and I'll talk about that later on, about the hate crime, and where we did a hate awareness event at the local mosque last year.
Okay, excellent.
Yes. Okay.
Yep. So Hanif, Rusholme, big part of Ethnic Health Forum in terms of your being the office located here, but what about you and your first experiences of Rusholme? Can you talk about that and then kind of move the conversation through your to present day and how you feel things have changed and evolved?
Yeah, when we moved into Rusholme, it was and is still a thriving stretch of Manchester, which kind of starts from just by the Whitworth Park and ends almost towards the boundary of Fallowfield, I think. So it's kind of, we call it the Curry Mile. It's now part of it's part of Manchester's history now, actually. So if anyone Googles Curry Mile, you will find a whole host of information, and it's become an iconic part of Manchester. So anybody from outside wants to come and have a meal, they'll probably hear the word Curry Mile, and that's where they end up here. And even today, the landscape has changed, but Curry Mile, there were lots of South Asian restaurants here. So if anyone wanted to eat a quote-unquote curry, they would end up in Rusholme. Things have changed, and we have seen the kind of slow, gradual change of Rusholme in terms of its makeup, in terms of the population, in terms of businesses. We have seen an increasing trend of the old communities moving out of Rusholme, old businesses moving out and beginning to move towards Stockport Road alongside in Levenshulme, while Rusholme has slowly had an influx of Middle Eastern culture. So lots of new shisha bars, cafes with a Middle Eastern flavor. So we have seen, and obviously our work also is testimony to the fact, because we see clients we see clients who have made Manchester their home, and they are from Syria, from Kuwait, from Iraq, from the Horn of Africa. So we've seen quite an influx of new communities moving in and around Rusholme. Arabic, which was probably, I remember 10 years ago, one would never have heard Arabic in Rusholme. Now you probably hear Arabic on the streets. If one was a visitor and took a walk from, say, the traffic lights by the Whitworth Park towards the end of Wilmslow Road, you would definitely hear a range of languages, Arabic being one of them. A lot of the Kurdish communities are settled in from Kurdistan, who also are in the food business or catering business. in terms of a lot of small food outlets where you can have good value for money. You can have a good doner kebab sandwich for £2.50. I mean, where can you get a filling meal for £2.50? Say £3 with a can of drink. So I think it's got lots of things happening in Rusholme. So there are lots of positive aspects of Rusholme. There are, like I said, it's a diverse community. Trying to live with the old communities. We have challenges, and we've seen a lot of changes. Actually, one of the things anyone will notice in Rusholme is the cycle lane. I have my own views about the cycle lane. It has probably affected a lot of traffic coming into Manchester. A lot of feedback we receive is to say, well, I can't park my car and it's not easily accessible, so I actually rather drive further up or not come into Rusholme. So it has had its effects as well. On the other hand, we see statistics from Manchester City Council to say traffic is increasing. I think that whole debate around how many new people are coming into Rusholme, for what purposes, is an interesting one. I think all I can say is watch this space. And obviously we are trying to engage with the new communities, people who own restaurants, the businesses. So everyone has been affected in some shape or form. And the pandemic has created its own sets of challenges. Lots of businesses have been affected with the pandemic. Things have started to a little bit open up over the last couple of weeks now. But like I said, I think it's space to keep an eye out and watch the space.
How has it affected your work? What goes on here?
I think it has affected our work as well, in the sense that people were frightened. People had their own concerns about going out, and obviously with government guidelines to stay indoors. So people were reluctant to come into the office. And so it has also affected EHF in terms of we have also changed the way we are working. We are also working towards providing like a hybrid of services. So we're moving towards digitalization or remote working, as it's called in the sector. So we have staff now who are equipped with laptops so they can work from home or wherever they may be. So we are trying new ways of working. It has brought its challenges, but also not to completely stop the face-to-face, because a lot of the clients, some of them still prefer to see somebody face-to-face because they believe that their problem will be solved by sharing their problem, and they might have some things that can only be done face-to-face. So face-to-face is still, especially with the lockdown being eased, we are maintaining social distancing, we are wearing masks, we are using sanitizers, and we encourage anyone coming in the building to do so. So we are mindful of the precautions we need to be taking, but increasingly we are also thinking ahead with the view that if we can offer a different way to engage with clients, i.e. by remote working, it's also empowering clients to work in different way. Traditionally, historically, we've been so used to working in one particular way. And perhaps the pandemic has shifted everyone's thinking around what other ways can we work and still function. Of course, any new ways will have its challenges. We also have the challenges. Likewise, everyone has their challenges. But there are also, in times like this, there are also opportunities and I think that's where our role comes in. We always have been forward thinking and kind of forward looking in terms of planning where we're heading. So in terms of digitalization of services and remote working actually was something which we were thinking 6 months actually before COVID actually happened. So we were in negotiation with funders to say this is our idea. we want to be working remotely and we need support. So in fact, COVID came along and that just speeded up the process, So we had this idea of remote working 8 months ago actually. So COVID came along and actually pushed us to do something right now. And obviously a lot of the funders were also supporting this type of development. So yeah, we were at the right place, right time, which we, also were helped by other funders, grant makers in the UK. And we have a couple of new projects coming on stream now.
Okay, good. Okay, so when we first met Hanif as photographers photographing in Rusholme, 2017, I think it was, one Monday night, and some of us bumped into you and we formed this relationship. You were already quite keen to document the Curry Mile and Rusholme as it was. So can you talk about what your intentions at that point were and your aspirations for that project?
Okay, yes. I kind of quite surprised that it's kind of way back in 2017 and we are now in 2020. But yeah, the kind of concept and the idea of the project around documenting the history of the Curry Mile actually came through one day. My colleague Rauf and we were, as often, when we were in the office, part of our strength is, kind of thinking of ideas and possible projects. And we had moved into Rusholme, I think, maybe 2 years now into 2017. And then we obviously noticed the changing landscape. And obviously my role certainly is very much looking at developmental issues and trying to, not to use the word capitalize, but also aware of opportunities for new projects. And I had attended a heritage lottery seminar, information day, and kind of found out about different projects happening around UK and in Manchester. And then we came back and I came back in the office and we shared my thoughts with my colleague Rauf. And then suddenly we said, actually, how about a project around documenting live on the Curry Mile before we lose it? Because we have seen the changes happening in front of our eyes. A lot of the traditional South Asian businesses, restaurant owners were slowly moving out. New communities were coming in, and we said, actually, it's very important that this is recorded. And that became the idea for a project. And I think we have changed titles, but one of the first titles of the project was From Curry Mile to Shisha Mile was the title of the first draft of the project. And along those time, I met Phil and Mike, actually, who were photographers. I can't remember how they bumped into me or I bumped into them. I think they were taking photographs in the area, and they came upstairs, and then we actually talked about what they do. And I kind of said, actually, we have an idea, and we said, actually, maybe there is something out of this that we can work together. And obviously that idea and the project became, we had a series of meetings with the funder, with the Heritage Lottery. We did a draft. We had a volunteer student from the Manchester University. She helped us do some surveys on the need for the project. So we did a lot of groundwork. Actually, we did a draft as well on the project. And then it just set, because pressures from different projects. So the Curry Mile to Shisha Mile project has always been there, but it was kind of work in progress. For a while, it just sat on the shelf because other priorities came along. And then, but we had never forgotten. And then last year, we had a student who came in again as a volunteer. So we kind of reignited, so to speak. And again, my contact with Phil and Michael, who are photographers, and now they kept me in touch with what they are doing. Actually, they already have a website around www.currymile, if I'm not mistaken, project.com. So our vision or idea was to actually build this up into a project. I think the key element here is we didn't want to do it in isolation. We wanted to tie in with some type of educational element of it. So one of the ideas, and is still in the pipeline, is to go and see a couple of schools in the area and colleges, and then see how we can incorporate any learning that we do about Rusholme into some type of format where children might learn more about the Curry Mile whilst they are in school or in high school or certainly in primary school. So that's a project and thinking still in the pipeline, and we are very much hoping that we'll follow it up. Now with the pandemic and things are a bit quiet, we have time to reflect and see how we can take the initial idea to a stage where we actually get some resources into the organization and we are able to work in collaboration or partnership with the work that Michael and Phil has already done so far, which is great. I think we need to, as we say, we need to take it to step 2 or 3 now, so that we have a tangible product at the end of the day, So it becomes a win-win for them as photographers who are also capturing and documenting the history and the changing landscape of the Curry Mile. From EHF perspective, also it is providing opportunities for new people, new volunteers to get involved in the project and learning new skills, and it will be in addition to our portfolio of projects. So even though someone says, well, actually you are a health and social care agency, what are you doing with what's this? So our kind of scope and thinking is we are not narrowed in our vision. Food is part of culture. The Curry Mile changing landscape is part of the people who live here. So I think health and social care, we cannot talk about health and social care in isolation. And hence a project like the Curry Mile, from Curry Mile to Sisha Mile project, is actually quite inclusive. It takes in all dimensions from health, employment, culture, food, communities, who lives in the area, So it's quite an interesting, I'm quite optimistic and hopeful that we take this project, and sometimes project is the wrong word, but we take this initiative to a stage where we actually produce some tangible output, and it could be in the form of a booklet or a book or an exhibition. In fact, we had a series of meetings with the Manchester Library archive unit. They were very much on the game, on the idea. So they actually said, yes, we'll help you with the exhibition of the project. We'll give you space. We'll document everything that the project captures, so it becomes part of history, part of Manchester's history. So the archive unit at Manchester Library are still very much, officers have changed. The new officer is very much still interested. We also had negotiation or meetings with the Ahmed Race archive unit at Manchester University. So we have a number of partners who are interested in the project. It's just a matter of time and getting things together. And I'm quite hopeful and optimistic that we can actually move the Curry Mile to Sisha Mile project to a next stage.
Okay, thank you very much. And going back to Rusholme, one of the things you said, not necessarily the project, you said earlier on that a lot of businesses have relocated to Stockport Road. Which businesses what type of businesses left and relocated? What's Wilmslow Road now missing in terms of what's not here now, if you understand my question?
I think in terms of, kind of elaborating a little bit on the landscape and, who is currently in Rusholme. So some of the restaurants actually, because of the increasing rates and rents as well, is another factor which is affecting a lot of businesses in Rusholme. So people always have this assumption, idea to, well, Rusholme is a gold mine. Actually, it's no longer so-called a gold mine, because the rates and rents are quite high actually for this stretch of miles, even compared to maybe Chorlton or Disbury or Longside. So some of the businesses which have moved out, food businesses, restaurants, have moved onto Stockport Road, Longside, because they can get premises for less amount of rent, less rates, and hence the kind of changing landscape. So some of the restaurants actually have moved out. Potentially any new people who want to come in also look at the situation, work out their cost and say, actually, I'm going to be paying 10, 15 grand a year in Rusholme for the same space, and what I want to do, I can do that for half the amount in Longside or on Stockport Road. So that's been another key factor for a lot of people who are actually either moved out or thinking of moving out because of the cost factor. Plus also, when we did our survey, a lot of people said Curry Mile is becoming less of a family-oriented mile. People are not comfortable coming into Rusholme in the evenings like they used to do maybe 8-10 years ago. So that's another additional factor which a lot of people and potential investors take into consideration. We've had new restaurants open up. In fact, just below next to us, a Persian restaurant has opened up. It's been a couple of weeks. I just had a chat with him a couple of days back, and he wasn't very happy as of yet because he hasn't seen the kind of footfall that he thought will make his business a success. So, I mean, we get different views. Equally, 100 yards up the road, there is another Iranian place which is quite busy all the time. So actually, we have a diverse range of opinions and views. We have some of the clothing shops who always say, actually, business is really bad, it's tough. I don't know how I'm going to survive. Some of the newer shisha bars or cafes are also have also been affected by the pandemic. Equally, there is, from a public health point of view, Manchester City Council also, I think, strategically would like less shisha bars to open up in Rusholme. So that's another factor which actually will influence what happens in Rusholme over the next couple of years, because the question is, if the shisha bars and cafes close, what are we gonna replace it with? So I'm sure the policymakers and councillors and council strategic leads are probably thinking about it to say, yeah, okay, it's from a public health perspective, it's not a good thing to have, shisha bars in an area which affects individuals' health. But then if we decide to close it down, what are we going to replace it with? So there's a big question mark. And I think the next few years are going to be quite interesting and challenging.
What's influencing what? Would you say the change or the evolution in the cultural mix in Rusholme is influencing the change of offering on shop, or is it the other way? Or is it let's say shisha bars attracting more Arabic mix of visitors here? Which way around is it, or is it not that easy to say it's one or the other kind of?
I think that's a difficult one to pinpoint, which one is it. I think there is a mixture of influences being played out, so on the one hand we have the kind of wider remit of society as a whole, and people who are responsible for individuals' health and well-being. So when you bring a public health perspective for the population, then obviously there is a case to be made to say, actually, the harmful effects of shisha, which affects everyone who goes into a shisha bar and spends time. On the other hand, it has to be balanced, because those businesses also bring in revenue to the council. So it's where do you draw the line, So we have health and well-being of the population, and then you have the other side where policymakers or people who make decisions are also aware that closing down such establishments might have a loss in income. So where do we draw the line?
So how coronavirus aside, shisha bars aside, how positive are you about the future of Rusholme in 5-10 years? Where do you see it evolving, or how do you see it evolving?
Personally, I think a place like this will continue. It might morph into something else, into a more vibrant. I think with the strategic changes coming into the whole area, I'm not sure, I haven't read the current plans by Manchester Council on what the plans were. But I think at one stage there were plans to make this a kind of pedestrian area only. So that if that happens, then obviously it's going to affect the nature of businesses, the nature of shops, and who comes into the area. So I haven't actually read anything yet or spoken to the councillors. Perhaps maybe for you guys it might be worth, as part of the project, maybe worth talking to one or two of the councillors, maybe Rab Nawaz, who's probably lead on neighbourhoods for the area, who might be able to shed some light on the future of Rusholme. Personally, I think it will be a shame if we lose any aspect of Rusholme, because they are potentially, it's a hub of culture, food, clothing, and I think to have that place in Manchester where one can come in, still have a meal, whether it's a Middle Eastern oriented or whether it's a South Asian or whether it's something else, I think there is a new place open up, street food, I think Indian street food. I think it's a very good welcome addition to the curry mile, where you can have traditional South Asian stuff which you would normally get in Mumbai or in Calcutta, and to find something right like this on the curry mile, it's great, I don't need to travel to Mumbai. I can taste, masala dosa or something which I crave for right in the heart of Rusholme. So I think having a mix of businesses which cater for a number of communities, diverse range of communities, I think is good for Rusholme, and I wish the place, this area stays like this with a mixture of businesses, restaurants, other organizations. There are faith organizations based here, there are mosques here in the area, there are churches here, there are some international charities based here, local charities like ourselves based here. So I personally would like to see it continue.
Excellent, thanks Hanif. I've got one last question, and then maybe Phil may have some. So what is it that makes you happy? If you could say one thing that makes you happy, what is it?
One thing which makes me happy, I think to have, to have a decent income, decent place to live, the freedom to move around when you want to, eat nice food, sometimes obviously at home, but equally go out, go to the park, spend time in fantastic, gorgeous weather like today. I want to be in the park, have a walk, play with the kids or grandkids. Yeah, I think so. Small things in life make me happy. I'm not after a Cartier watch, no, by no means. I'm quite happy with a decent income. I think I enjoy my job, my work. So I think small things like that make me happy, really. In terms of leisure activities, I'm trying to incorporate some form of physical activity, which I haven't been able to do so as much. But I think, personally speaking, but also receiving some medical advice from my GP, says, Hanif, you need to do a bit more physical exercise. So I'm hoping that with my colleagues, we've talked about maybe, doing kind of regular walk. I mean, one of the other projects now, I always think of a project. One of the projects that we have in Manchester, which is going on as part of Greater Manchester, which is encouraging walking. So I think it's a project in the pipeline, which we also want to encourage. And sometimes you might want to do something, but then if it becomes part of a project, an idea, and you get some of your beneficiaries, some of the clients who are isolated, who don't come out of the house, so it's like a trigger. It's like an incentive or motivation to do something collectively. So I mean, one of the things we discussed a couple of weeks back is to try and get 8 or 10 men and a group of women who, with the women staff, they can encourage women to go out and take a walk around Rusholme in the park, and likewise something for men where we meet once a week, take a walk, and later on maybe meet up for a tea or coffee. So it's a way of engagement and also participation. So it's kind of kills two birds with one stone. So for individuals, but also for our clients or beneficiaries.
Good. Excellent. Nothing else from me. So one. This is not an interview question, but the survey you have done, Hanif, sounds really interesting. Could we read that?
Sure. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Because there may be some really interesting quotes or bits of information that we can then put into the exhibition or into our book.
Definitely. In fact, it's probably on my desktop.
Okay.
I'll give it to you.
Yeah. That'd
you can go through it and then return it back.
Yeah.
I think one of the students who was with us until this COVID happened, I think she has transferred the data and everything onto our hard drive. I will double check it's there, but we have the hard copy anyway. So I'll let you have it.
Yeah, or if it's emailable, but anyway, whichever. But
whichever.
I think there'll be some great information.
Yeah, definitely. I'll let you have it so you can actually
that'd be great.
See the. And in fact, we were hoping that. I think because so many other projects are happening, the kind of Curry Mile to Seacher Mile project, it started in 2017. It hasn't really. In fact, we were almost to a stage where we were now ready to do the final draft and apply. So we had a meeting with the Heritage Lottery officer who was responsible for Manchester. So we said, listen, this idea has been there simmering for last 2 years. Kind of, it's had its, we've motivated, then something else came up. It's still there. The idea is still there. And I think what we needed to do, in fact, when the student came in, we said, can you do this a new survey? Just do a random survey and see is the idea still viable or feasible? Is it still interesting? And I think the response was, the idea is still interesting. It's not as if, it's old now. I think what you guys have started is, I think, brilliant. I think if it was a properly funded project where, you guys might, costing wise, we might be able to add, I don't know what your cost might be, to do, say 10, 15 interviews, edited, blah, blah, blah. It might be 5-10 grand. I don't know. We can incorporate some type of budget, maybe cost of whatever you're thinking.
Yeah.
So we haven't reached that stage, but yeah.
Because we've got an exhibition lined up next May in the Central Reference Library.
Okay.
Got that date nailed down, so that will happen 100% with the photos, with all these interviews.
Okay.
Extracts from the interview.
Yeah.
Not complete one.
But then that isn't the end of it, is it? Because then we produce a book, and actually all that then is part of this whole bigger thing, isn't it? Because it's a huge thing, And,
I mean,
we're just predominantly doing visuals. You're doing a lot more in-depth talking, and
I think it's the kind of capturing, and I think, I I suppose this is kind of, your project is as kind of on a kind of serious level now, is to kind of sit down and say actually what's already there. What is the missing link now to get to a stage where if we need to tweak the idea now, because the funder will say, okay, someone's already done this, what are you offering, what are you doing, which is something different, which is gonna not sustain itself, but what added value does it bring to the whole from a central library perspective, in terms of they were interested in the idea, they were already on board, but I think the officer left for a new job. So there's a new lady in
I think it's important to pick that up again because there's funding required even for the exhibition. So if the two
because the funding, I think we were given a quote by the library to say it's going to cost you 1,500 quid. So we said we'll put that in the cost, in the bid, because the lady, I need to go in my notes, but there was a cost. So it might be, I think there was an element where said it's no cost, but then for something there were, even the library, Manchester Council said there is going to be a cost attached to it. And I think at that stage they gave us a quote for £1,500.
Yeah, they seem to come up with different numbers, don't they? But I think in our mind, for me and Phil to put on that exhibition, create a book, do all the work, it's probably like £4,000.
Yeah, I would imagine so, yeah.
Minimum. Then if it becomes something bigger, so
at the moment, are you in receipt of any funding from anywhere?
No,
Arts Council or anywhere else?
Not at the moment, and that's what we need to do. But I think that we need to be careful of not duplicating an application because for the reason you're saying, they'll say, well, hold on, that's going on.
Yeah.
In terms of the lottery, it should be our exhibition should be part of your
bid.
Bid. And then the Arts Council, we haven't approached yet. We can approach them separately because it's an art exhibition. And I've approached a few businesses individually. We've had commitment from one for a grant of £1,000 actually. So that's an additional source of funding for the exhibition. The exhibition is part of the bigger things. I think with the Arts Council, let's chat with you again when you're in a position to build that up again, and then this stuff should be part of that.
Did I send you the draft of the...
I think you did a couple of years ago. I don't know whether it's moved on since then, but by all means resend where you're at with it, and then let's...
Because what had happened was they had closed that whole... There was a website where, you could start writing drafts, save it. But then when COVID came, they said everything now is closed.
Okay.
So that our unique reference number we had, where I used to log in and just add any idea or anything that we wanted to start populating the questions, because some questions were easy, but then there is a main section where you need to do your whole project plan, stage by stage, what you're going to do, week 1, week 2, right throughout the project, with the budget, where you're going to do, what you're going to do, which is the detail bit, and where the budget goes in to say what are you asking for. And I think our initial figure was about 35-40k, because the officer says this project could be 100 grand even.
Because depending on how far
you need to be very focused. And our budget that we are giving out in Greater Manchester maximum is 50. So you have an idea now. So whatever costing you do gotta be under 50. So we were keeping the cost under 50 also. Someone else said if you go for 50 you may not get it. So to be realistic, to get a better chance, we were saying, okay, we'll cost it around 25, 30. Out of the 30, part-time was for a worker to do all the work. Somebody with IT skills, who is actually going to go out, somebody with experience in digitalization, that type of role. So I think 18,000 pounds for the 12 month was for salary cost. Then the rest was for other costs, to produce a booklet or something else, blah blah blah.
Well, so
that's something we can work.
So is that portal shut and you need to start the whole thing again, do you think?
Yes, I'm waiting for it. I just got an email 2 weeks back to say, well, actually, criteria have changed and we are going to be opening soon. So I'm waiting for that development. as soon as it's open, my first point of query will be back to the new officer. I think again the new office staff has changed again.
Yeah.
So it's always important to link up with the key officer for the heritage.
We need to be involved in this.
So what I was thinking is now with the Zoom type of meetings, maybe the next stage is when we do have a meeting, maybe you guys need to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Because
you know what's happening.
even having the fact we've got an exhibition date, I think will help to say.
Oh, definitely,
look,
yeah,
we've got
because
this,
yeah.
you know, and also the archive. There's a lady actually who deals with the archiving for photographs.
Schools, so their mindset, in their mindset, maybe, you know, in fact, and I had this conversation with the head teacher a couple of months back. She said, Hanif, maybe we need to have an in-depth conversation, because our kind of thinking was to say, okay, you know, children go out, you know, various trips they make. So one of the trips that they make would be specifically a visit to the Curry Mile. You know,
Which school is that?
This is the Claremont.
Okay, so Hill Place do that, I think, don't they? They've been out here.
Yes,
Yeah.
the Claremont.
The Clement's
Yes.
bang, like on New Tree Road, isn't it? Oh no, on I know the road. Yeah.
They were thinking of coming onto the main road, but I think they decided against it through health and safety. But they have been along Claremont Road.
And I think it's about getting the buy-in of whoever is responsible, not just as a one-off.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is how do we incorporate it as to say, well, not just once and you forget about it. So this principal or head teacher comes and goes. Whoever comes in is written within the
Should be in the curriculum every year, shouldn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
And that is the challenging bit. How do we how do we influence that bit? You know. So yes, to get the buy-in from the head mistress or headmaster of one of the schools is great, but it might be that we might need to talk to 5 of them, and one might be the right person who actually takes ownership. Because if someone will say, "Oh, it's extra work for me," they know. I know how this. They think they say, "Oh well, good for you as a project, but for me, more work. I have to get a staff, blah blah blah." So it's important to identify somebody who's interested, other than the job.
Yeah.
To say, actually, I need to make this is important.
Yeah.
On their thinking psyche, to say, well, I'm not just doing it as part of my job, but I'm doing it for reasons other than just my job.
Yeah, because they're passionate or interested in it. And,
So
absolutely.
if we can get some headmistress who will hook onto this concept, is the type of person we want. Whether it's Claremont or whether it's Hill Place, or it could be another one. So I had started the early discussion with the college at the back. So we had 8 students from there who came here on a placement. You know, so that was first step to get in. You know, but then things changed so fast. You know, even then, because our eventual idea was to get the college involved in the project, so they could be doing as part of some of their coursework, part of their work. They could be doing some of the photographs, interviews, as part of skilling up. You know, they could be working under you, maybe.
In the early days,
They could work with you, for example.
in the early days, I got in touch with the college and through to the geography teacher there, and I was just wondering if there were any projects that any of the students would have done, because when I was teaching A-level geography, a place like this, on their doorstep, they would be doing building function and traffic and footfall and all those kind of things. And I just wondered if they had any projects which we could look at or whatever, which might have been useful. But he said there weren't any, or he didn't get back to me.
Again, it's like sometimes they don't want to take additional work.
It is down to what you were saying, whether they actually, whether they're just turning up for work as a job, or they really want to embrace other stuff.
Yes.
And that's more time, that's more effort.
Yes.
Right, Hanif, that's been brilliant. Thank you very much. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He's packed. Yeah. So
Yeah.
It's no level. It's level. Yeah. Not bad. Yeah, that's probably it. As it focuses, there you go. Okay, right. So,
Okay, honey.
well, no, let's test these first.
Right,
Right,
let's test.
okay, testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
Testing 1, 2, 3.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
So I'll just go through the kind of structure of the interview, and it's really a relaxed conversation, Hanif. But one thing to bear in mind is, even though I'm talking to you, you need to try and look in here all the time,
Okay.
which is really
Yeah.
hard. So I may kind of just like do this.
either that or look at me.
Because when you're watching the film,
Yeah.
someone will be watching you, and kind of just bearing in mind that.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
And then there's kind of three parts to the conversation, which is, first bit's really about you personally, so your background, where you were born, you can say what age you are if you like,
Sure, yeah.
when you came, if you were born outside the UK, when you came to the UK, your family background, etc.
Okay.
Second one is about here, your work here, Ethnic Health Forum. And then the third bit, and they'll kind of intermix a little bit, is about Rusholme, past, present, future. And also at that point, we can talk about our kind of working relationship, how we came to be involved with you, etc. So it's just a relaxed conversation. So if we just start with you first, and if you just speak about your name, where you were born, how old you are, etc., and just go with the flow into it.
Okay.
Okay.